Debate is Meridian Energy Limited. The question is that the report of the Commerce Committee on the 2008-9 financial review of Meridian Energy be noted. I call the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, Meridian Energy is one of the three state-owned power generators and is the subject to some very similar issues to those debated under the Genesis Power debate. And I'd like to refer back to the previous government speaker who said in respect of the government's privatisation policy, "We'll tell the voters before the election what we're going to do to them." Well, sir, that would be lovely, except they didn't do that last time. What they told the voters last time in respect of one SOE, Kiwibank, is we'll never ever sell Kiwibank, according to John Key. They said in respect of GST, we won't raise GST. And they said in respect of the vast majority of Kiwis, you will be better off about the budget. But of course they weren't, because they forgot to include the rate of inflation in the calculator, and that left average Kiwis $30 to $50 a week worse off. And that's even before you take in costs like early childcare. The point, sir, is that nobody believes this national government anymore. In fact, actually I lie, a small minority do, but 53% of New Zealanders, when polled recently, said they do not believe any commitment that the Prime Minister would give on SOEs like Meridian Energy. They don't believe he won't change his mind again. And which Prime Minister is it? The one who will never ever sell, or the one who's dressing up to bring something to the electorate before the election, sir? And it's sort of what we're expecting from this Prime Minister on the subject, sir. This is the same Prime Minister that says that ministers are no longer responsible to him for their behaviour under the Cabinet Manual or their behaviour under the standing orders of this House. And so we've had, as recently as today, sir, the extraordinary spectacle of an Attorney-General that once again has been caught out not giving a full and complete declaration on pecuniary interests. Sir, that is a sham, but exactly what we'd expect from this government. Sir, in respect of Meridian Energy as a major energy generator, it is absolutely intimately tied up with the nature of the rules under the Electricity Industry Bill, soon to be referred to Parliament. Sir, the Max Bradford reforms of the 1980s were a complete disaster. They were supposed to drive the long-run price path for electricity down. Instead it rose, or at least it rose for residential consumers. It went down, of course, for major industrials like TY Point, but it went up for mum and dad, like the old lady across the road from my electorate office who told me that in the first week after the budget, her power price rises more than ate anything she was going to get out of superannuation. More than ate it. And that is typical, sir, of New Zealanders up and down the country who are shivering in their cold and musty flats because they cannot afford power. They cannot afford power because, amongst other things, this minister has told companies like Meridian Energy, you must improve your financial performance. Well, let's think about that, Mr. Speaker. Meridian Energy, as a generator, has a bunch of dams and they have power lines running from the dams. There's not much they can do, sir, other than turn the tap on and off or raise the price. So when challenged in front of the Select Committee about why he hadn't asked the generators not to raise prices, the best this minister could say was, it's a blunt instrument. Yes, we know it's a blunt instrument, Minister. Why have you not lifted a finger to protect New Zealanders from rampant power increases? Why are you condoning increases above the rate of inflation and above the impact of ETS? And the reason is because there is a quiet wink and a nudge with the Minister of Finance that they could use the dough. That's the bottom line. And the Minister knows it's within his power as Minister of SOEs simply to issue a direction under the SOE Act that would forbid Meridian Energy or Genesis from raising prices faster than, take your pick, the General Consumer Price Index, the effect of ETS, that plus 5%, you name it. The point is the government has not lifted a finger to protect ordinary New Zealanders from rampant power price increases. Ah, well, part two of the story. What might be the medium-term solution? We'll privatise them. Oh, that'll keep prices down. Yeah, right. We'll privatise them so the boys in Merrill Lynch, the Prime Minister's old firm, can make a quiet killing on the transaction. Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
What would the effects of privatising Meridian Energy have been if it was privatised 5 years ago? Well, sir, under the previous government, Meridian Energy invested in certain assets in Australia, particularly Southern Hydro. Sir, it made a cool $1 billion profit off those transactions, which it returned to the taxpayer, returned to the Crown in the form of a couple of big cheques when we did the last long-term hold review, because Meridian said, and I quote, "We should not be our own bank." No, you shouldn't. That money belongs to the taxpayer, return the capital. So they did. Now imagine, sir, that Meridian had been privatised. Meridian privatised would have returned the profits, all right, returned it to their private shareholders. Returned it to private shareholders, sir, and it wouldn't have gone into the People's Bank or the Consolidated Fund, wouldn't have been offset against taxes. It would have simply been somebody else's dividend cheque. And enough of this sham about why should mum and dad Kiwi be prevented from buying a few shares in something they already own, Mr Chairman. Why would mum and dad Kiwi pay twice? They've already paid for Meridian Energy through their taxes, which is why they're already entitled to the dividends, like the $1 billion from Southern Hydro. Meridian Energy, sir, is a prime example of an asset not to sell.
Very confused.
Well, let's move on to the next little story the minister's been spinning. He said to the Finance and Expenditure Committee, oh, the performance of our SOEs has been so terrible, in direct contravention from Mr Brownlee on his feet, who said the performance of SOEs has been just fine. Of course, Mr Powell wasn't above quoting the annual results at the depths of the recession last year rather than taking a long-run average, because if he had, sir, what he would have found is that the performance of the SOE portfolio is within a couple of hundredths of a percentage point of the performance of the NZX 50, i.e. apples for apples, horses for courses. They're just as good as private businesses already. But that wouldn't suit National's ideology, would it? It wouldn't suit National's mantra that the only way to get performance is to privatise. It's simply not true. There's simply no evidence for that. It's perfectly possible for companies that are state-owned to perform well. Ask Air New Zealand. Air New Zealand, sir, has performed well as a Crown entity under state ownership. So has Meridian, so has Genesis, and the Minister knows very well that it is largely Crown-owned and would have been sold to the knacker's yard had the previous Minister of Finance not intervened. But of course, the one to take the cake, if the public has any doubt about these issues, is Kiwi Bank. No wonder 85% of New Zealanders want to retain Kiwi Bank. They know we've got a terrible savings deficit. They know we're bleeding red on our international accounts. They know very well we have to make our financial sector stronger in the interests of all New Zealanders, and that Kiwi Bank is a critical, strategic piece on that chessboard. So what does this lot of clowns want to do? Mr. Speaker, they want to flog it off supposedly to mum and dad Kiwi, knowing very well that'll end up in the hands of its Australian competitors. Shame, sir. They should be building up the New Zealand financial sector, not selling it to the wolves, Mr. Speaker. That's right. Not selling it to the wolves. And I ask you, sir, why is it that Bill English and John Key cannot agree on this matter? Why is it that John Key says never, ever, ever, and Bill English comes out the day after the budget and says, what about selling Kiwi Bank? And when... Yeah, maybe they don't take tea together, Mr. Speaker. I suspect that might be true. After all, who changed their vote in the last leadership run? Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely unconscionable. Oh, it was the one before. Well, we don't know about Slippery Key. Might have changed his vote 2 or 3 times. I wouldn't have been at all surprised, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Kiwi Bank must not be sold. It is not in New Zealand's interest to sell Kiwi Bank, just as it is not in New Zealand's interest to sell Meridian Energy or Genesis or Mighty River Power, because those are crucial, strategic monopoly assets in New Zealand. And it is a sham that the electricity bill coming before this House contains no measures more stringent than simply shuffling a few of the deck chairs on those boats. They simply swap a power station between a couple of the generators, sir, and call that structure